Hello, English learners, and welcome to the Learn English Quickly with podcast. I'm your host, Decent.
And I'm Olivia.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Excited to chat about English learning today.
Me too, you know. In my experience, one of the trickiest things about learning English is making that leap from understanding to actually speaking. Have you noticed that too?
Absolutely. It's incredibly common. Many learners find they can read articles, watch movies, maybe even understand a podcast like this one. But when it comes to speaking themselves, it's like hitting a wall.
Exactly. So let's try to break down that wall today. And to start, why do you think this happens? Why is speaking so much harder than understanding?
Well, think about it. Like learning any new skill. Let's say you want to learn to play the piano.
Okay,
You can listen to beautiful piano music for hours, understand the melody, but that won't magically make your fingers dance across the keys.
that's a great analogy.
Yeah,
So, listening and understanding, or like observing the skill, but speaking is where we need to train our language muscles, so to speak.
precisely. And just like with piano speaking, requires practice, building muscle memory, and coordinating a whole bunch of mental processes. Plus, there's the added element of confidence, which we'll get to later.
Okay, so practice is key. Now, one thing I've noticed is that many learners get stuck in the habit of translating everything in their heads, and they think in their native language, then try to translate it into English before speaking. What's your take on that?
It's a huge roadblock. Imagine trying to have a smooth conversation while constantly flipping through a dictionary in your mind.
Right,
It just slows everything down.
right? And it can make the spoken English sound unnatural or hesitant, so how can we get out of that translation trap?
One powerful technique is called thinking in English. It sounds simple, but it takes conscious effort.
Thinking in English. So instead of translating, I should try to form my thoughts directly in English.
Exactly. It's like shifting gears in your mind. Instead of seeing English as a code to be deciphered, you start to internalize it as a natural way to express your thoughts.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But how do we actually do that? I mean, it's not like I can just flip a switch and start thinking in a different language.
It's definitely a process, but there are some practical steps you can take. One of the most effective is to create an immersive environment, even if you're not living in an English-speaking country.
So, surround yourself with English as much as possible.
Exactly. Listen to English music, watch movies, or television shows, read books, even change the language settings on your phone.
So, it's about exposing yourself to the rhythm and patterns of the language, almost like training your ear to think in English.
Precisely. And the more you immerse yourself, the less you'll rely on translation. You'll start to notice that English phrases and expressions pop into your head more naturally.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like building a mental library of English ready to be used when you need it. But I imagine this takes time and dedication.
It does. But even small steps can make a big difference. Remember, we're building a habit here.
Okay, so consistency is key. Now, besides this thinking in English idea, are there any other common pitfalls that you see learners falling into when it comes to speaking?
One big one is the fear of making mistakes. I think this holds so many people back from actually opening their mouths and practicing.
Oh, absolutely the fear of sounding silly or saying the wrong thing. I think we've all been there. So how can we help learners overcome that fear?
Well, first, it's important to remember that everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the learning process. I mean, even I make mistakes sometimes, and English is my native language.
That's reassuring to hear. But I think it's easy to forget that when you're feeling self-conscious about your speaking.
Absolutely. So, the key is to shift your perspective on mistakes. Instead of seeing them as failures, see them as opportunities to learn and grow. Every mistake is a chance to improve your pronunciation, grammar, or vocabulary.
So, it's like those fail videos we see online, where people laugh at themselves and learn from their mishaps. It's about taking ourselves less seriously and focusing on the learning process.
Exactly. Embrace those mistakes, learn from them, and move on.
Okay, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Now, I know we've talked about practicing speaking and getting over the fear of making mistakes, but are there any specific techniques or exercises that you find particularly helpful for developing speaking fluency?
Oh, absolutely. There are a few techniques that can really boost your speaking skills. And one of my favorites is called shadowing.
Shadowing. I've heard of that, but I'm not entirely sure how it works. Did you tell me more?
It's actually a pretty simple concept. You listen to a native speaker, like someone on a podcast or in a movie, and you try to repeat what they're saying almost simultaneously.
It's like a shadow following the speaker's voice.
Precisely, you're mimicking their pronunciation, intonation, even the rhythm and pacing. It's like a vocal workout for your English.
That sounds interesting. So I could put on my favorite English podcast or television show and try to talk along with the speaker.
Exactly. It's a fun way to practice your pronunciation, get comfortable with the flow of English, and even pick up new vocabulary and phrases.
I can see how that would be helpful. It's like having a real-time conversation partner, even if it's just with a recording. Do you have any tips for making shadowing more effective?
One tip is to start with short segments. You don't need to shadow an entire movie at once. Choose a scene you like maybe a minute or two, and focus on that. Then, as you get more comfortable, you can gradually increase the length of the segments.
Okay, so start small and build up gradually. What else?
Another tip is to pay attention to the details. Notice how the speaker pronounces certain words, where they put the stress, and how their intonation changes throughout the sentence.
So, it's not just about repeating the words, but really trying to imitate the nuances of their speech.
Exactly. The more you pay attention to those details, the more natural your own spoken English will become.
Wow, this shadowing technique sounds like a really powerful tool. I'm definitely going to give it a try.
I encourage you to. It's a fun and effective way to improve your speaking fluency.
So we've talked about thinking in English, overcoming the fear of making mistakes, and this amazing shadowing technique. What other tips do you have for building speaking confidence? I know practice is important, but are there any specific ways to make that practice more effective?
You know, one of the things I always tell my students is don't underestimate the power of simple everyday phrases.
You mean things like, hello, how are you? Or, thank you.
Exactly. These phrases might seem basic, but they're the building blocks of any conversation. And having a solid grasp of these common phrases can make you feel much more confident and comfortable when you're speaking English.
That makes sense. It's like having a set of tools you can always rely on no matter what the conversation throws your way.
Precisely so. I encourage learners to focus on mastering these PHR phrases. Practice saying them out loud in different contexts until they feel natural and effortless.
So it's not just about knowing the words, but really owning them, making them part of your active vocabulary.
Exactly. It's about being able to use these phrases without hesitation, without having to think too hard, and that kind of fluency comes with practice and repetition.
He got it? So focus on those everyday phrases, practice them until they feel like second nature. What other tips do you have for making the most of our speaking practice?
Another simple but effective technique is recording yourself speaking.
You mean like talking into my phone? I do that all the time. But usually it's just me complaining about the traffic.
Well, next time, try recording yourself speaking English. Maybe choose a topic you're interested in, or even read a short article aloud. Then listen back to the recording and pay attention to your pronunciation, fluency, and overall clarity.
That's a great idea. That's like having your own personal language coach in your pocket?
Exactly. and it can be really eye-opening. You might be surprised by what you hear, both good and bad.
I can imagine it's like seeing yourself from a different perspective. What kind of things should I be listening for when I review these recordings?
Well, first, pay attention to your pronunciation. Are you pronouncing words clearly and correctly? If not, try to identify the specific sounds you're struggling with and practice them in isolation.
Okay, so pinpoint those tricky sounds and work on them specifically. What else?
Next, focus on your fluency. Are you speaking smoothly and confidently, or are you hesitating a lot and searching for words? If you're stumbling, try to practice those phrases or sentences more until they flow more naturally.
So, it's about identifying those areas where I'm getting stuck and smoothing them out with more practice.
Precisely. And don't be afraid to experiment. Try different intonations, different speeds, different ways of expressing yourself.
It's about playing with the language and finding what feels most comfortable and natural for me.
Exactly, the more you experiment, the more confident and expressive you'll become as a speaker.
This is all so helpful. I feel like we're giving our listeners a real toolbox for improving their speaking skills.
I hope so. And remember, the most important thing is to be consistent with your practice. Even a few minutes each day can make a huge difference over time.
Consistency is key. Now, before we wrap up this part of our chat, I want to touch on a few key vocabulary words that we've been using.
Great idea. Vocabulary is the foundation of any language.
First up, we have the word fluent. It seems like everyone wants to be fluent in English, but what does that really mean?
Well, fluency is about being able to communicate your ideas smoothly and effortlessly, without having to pause or search for words. It's about feeling comfortable and confident in your ability to express yourself in English.
So, it's not just about knowing a lot of words, but being able to use them effectively in real-time conversation.
Exactly. It's about having that natural flow of language, where you can speak without having to overthink every word or grammar rule.
That makes sense. And it sounds like achieving fluency is a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. It's a process of continuous learning and improvement.
Well, this has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the importance of thinking in English to embracing mistakes and using techniques like shadowing to build fluency. I'm already feeling more motivated to practice.
That's great to hear. And remember, the most important thing is to enjoy the journey. Learning English should be fun and rewarding. So find what works for you and keep practicing.
Great advice. We'll be back soon with part 2 of this episode, where we'll dive even deeper into practical tips and strategies for improving your English speaking skills. Until then, keep practicing and stay motivated. Thank you.